through history and in basically every culture of the world, you will find stories of creatures with black eyes, so black it's like staring into long dark tunnels. And if you're one of the unlucky ones that find yourself staring into these dark eyes, you will find yourself getting a feeling of utter dread. And there's good reason for that. It's because these beings are taking away part of your soul. I'm talking about something no human being truly understands, yet we have all heard stories about them in one form or another, and each and every one of these stories is terrifying. The stories revolve around entities with jet black eyes who appear in the middle of the night looking to take something from you. Depending on who you ask, these beings are called demons or vampires. Some say they're evil spirits or even aliens, but in our culture we call them the black-eyed children. The very specific stories of the black-eyed children have been making the rounds in the US and the UK for a very long time, but go beyond these countries as well, mainly countries that are English-speaking such as Canada, Australia and New Zealand. It's thought of as an urban legend, but there really might be something to it, which I will get into later. The stories usually always happen in remote places late at night. To get a clearer idea of what the stories are about, just picture this. You are driving alone at night on a remote stretch of road. Maybe you've been visiting a friend, or perhaps heading up to a remote cabin in the woods that you have hired for a holiday. You look at your petrol gauge and see you need to fill up. You find a petrol station. But as it's past 10 p.m. at night, all that is available is one petrol pump. The shop inside this station is closed. You fill the car up, pay at the little window, and just as you're going to get back into the driver's seat, you see some figures walking towards you. As they get closer, you can see it's just a couple of kids. They come up to you and ask if you can take them somewhere. They are in urgent need of a ride, but the kids seem completely calm, not in any way scared or look like they are in some sort of trouble. You then think it might be a trap, that some adults will come out of the trees to ambush and rob you. But as you look around, you don't see anyone. They are just kids. Your guard is down. You aren't worried about them attacking you. But as it's so strange they just appeared out of nowhere, you're still a little wary. You might even consider giving them a lift. That is until you get a good look at their eyes. They are completely black, no pupils or iris, just complete blackness. The lights from the petrol station are reflecting in them. Your stomach starts to knot up. This is not normal. It's not even human. Then a deep fear creeps in and you're unsure how to react. The worst part is, they sense your fear. You quickly jump into your car and speed off. But is it possible they took a little piece of you away without you even noticing? That's just one way things could play out. There are multiple variations as people tell of their encounters with these creepy, black-eyed young people. They can show up in different ways, out and about, hanging around diners and coffee shops, or they can be in the woods or on deserted streets where they will approach anyone they see. If they see someone with a car, they will ask for a ride. If the driver agrees to take them, the children will stay very quiet during the ride until they reach their destination. Once there, they will hop out of the car and disappear into the night. Another way they can pop up is a more frightening and intrusive manner, by knocking on someone's front door and asking if they can come in. They often say they want to phone their parents, use the toilet or need a glass of water. They will beg to be let in, pleading to use the phone or their parents will be worried. People who claim to have encountered them say they were wearing old-fashioned clothes, almost like they were from another time, or they had on dark hoodies which were used to conceal their faces. Apart from the kids showing up alone in the dead of night, which is scary enough in itself, there is the indescribable vibe they give off, according to witnesses, who say they felt awful, uncomfortable, almost ill, and the longer they are with the children, the worse it gets. It's as if the children get into their heads and take control. If you look across the internet, you will find countless stories about these kids. But where did all these stories actually come from? Well, the first time someone reported seeing the black-eyed kids was back in 1996. Brian Bethel, a reporter from Abilene, Texas, was in his car one night trying to read under the dim streetlight when two kids came over to him. At first, he thought they were after money, so rolled down his window to give them some change, but then felt really scared and didn't know why. He noticed the kids were wearing hoodies with the hood pulled tight across their faces. They asked him for a ride home as they wanted to see a movie but left their money at home. Brian was completely shocked when he saw their eyes. They were totally black, no pupils or anything. One of the kids noticed how scared he looked and tried to calm him down, but that made him feel even worse. It always bothered Brian how they knew he was feeling so anxious, as he knew he wasn't showing it outwardly. As a reporter, he had found himself in some crazy situations before, talking to some unsavoury people, so he knew how to behave to not let on that he was worried, so he could talk to them to get the information he needed. Brian felt that the intuition of these children were beyond what would be considered as normal. He felt they were messing with his mind, so after a moment he rolled up his window and drove off. When he checked his rearview mirror, the kids were completely gone. Brian was a well-known journalist in his area, and when his readers read the story he had published about his encounter with the children, they didn't doubt that there was some truth to it. He wouldn't risk his reputation by publishing nonsense. Then people from all around started telling their stories to let him know that what he saw was real. This was the first time they felt they could speak publicly about it without fear of being ridiculed. Because of Brian writing about his sightings, the stories began to spread. Now websites that published urban legends began to get filled with stories about the BEK, and many people told of their experiences with them. In January of 2016, a woman in Kansas reported that during a snowstorm, some children knocked on her door. She said it was a boy and girl who appeared to be around 8 years old, and they were not dressed properly for the cold. She felt sorry for them, so allowed them into her house to warm up. Once inside, they asked to use the bathroom. Shortly after that, her husband's nose began to bleed. Now, he wasn't prone to nosebleeds, and it certainly wasn't a small bleed. While his wife took care of him, she turned round to find the children staring at both of them intently. Then they said, "Our parents are here," then opened the door and left. The woman looked out of her window and saw a car with two tall men inside dressed in suits. Once the children were inside the car, it drove away. In another instance, just outside of Dallas, 37-year-old David Kessel and his girlfriend Megan were driving to an old countryside house which they were looking after for some friends who were going away on holiday. The property was surrounded by forests and hills, so far away from any roads and other properties. The first few days were very peaceful as the couple enjoyed swimming in the pool and looking after the many animals their friends had. Then one evening, after tending to the horses and putting the geese away in their pen, Megan noticed the cats were acting strangely, hissing and growling at one of the patio doors. Then the horses got scared and started kicking at the stable doors. Then the sky grew darker and the wind picked up. David and Megan headed inside the house before the rain came down. After a couple of minutes being inside, there was a loud knock at the door. Megan answered it, and standing there were two children around 12 and 14 years old. They were drenched by the rain. Then another taller and thinner teenager joined them. All three were wearing dark hoodies and looking down to hide their faces. They asked if they could come in, as they had gotten lost in the woods. David was very apprehensive. Not only was the place out in the middle of nowhere, so how did they get there? But also the electrical gates around the property had been closed. He stalled them by talking to them over his girlfriend's shoulder, and that's when the tall boy looked up and stared at David. He described the boy's eyes as being dark, bottomless pits. The boy then grinned, revealing a set of blackened teeth. Then all three began calling David by his name, taunting him, saying he was going to die alone. David was terrified, so slammed the door and locked it. He didn't realise that Megan had been outside on the porch when he locked the door, and when she knocked to come in, he backed away, thinking it was the kids again. She knocked on the window and he eventually let her in. She was saturated from the rain and told David the kids had ran into the forest and then disappeared. When the owners of the house returned a couple of days later and was told what had happened, they revealed to David and Megan that on occasions the security cameras around the home had captured the image of three ghostly figures moving across the lawn. They couldn't make them out entirely, but they were clearly three entities. So, some pretty scary stories and unexplainable stuff here. If you keep looking, you can find several encounters that are all pretty similar. Some people say all these stories are made up, yet others, especially those who have had encounters with the BEK, say they are totally true. What these children are and what they want, no one is exactly sure. As it turns out, Brian Bessel's story back in 1996 opened the way for people to come forward to tell their experiences. He may have been the first to speak out about seeing them, but his wasn't the first encounter. These kids have been around for a long, long time. An anonymous man told a story that his grandfather Tom had told him that occurred in Texas back in 1918. That year had been an unusually hot summer that had stretched out for months, which is why Tom had all the doors and windows open in his house to allow for some sort of air circulation. He was sitting on his porch one evening reading a book when he heard someone knocking on the front door. He thought it might have been some man looking for food or work. His house was right next to the train track, so that sort of situation wasn't uncommon. Tom went through the house to answer the door and to his surprise found two children, a boy and a girl, standing in the doorway. They asked if they could come in and take a rest, as the heat was so overwhelming and their house was far away. Tom looked at them carefully and noticed some strange things. Despite the intense heat, the children weren't sweating. Their skin seemed dull and they were wearing thick jumpers. It didn't appear they needed a rest from anything. He offered them a seat on the porch, but they insisted on coming inside the house as it would be cooler indoors. Then the girl began to repeat over and over, "Can we come in? Can we come in?" Getting on his nerves, Tom slapped her hand just to silence her. Then she looked up and stared him in the eyes. What he saw stuck with him for the rest of his life. The girl's eyes weren't eyes at all, but two completely black sockets. Once again, the girl asked in a chilling voice, "Sir, can we come in?" Tom was so scared he just walked backwards into his kitchen without responding. He was so afraid he just sat there for a long time, not even daring to look out of the kitchen door, until his dog, trembling in fear, started to bark, which made him react. Then he finally looked out towards the open front door to see the children had gone. With so many different stories from all around the world, there are 4 characteristics that they all seem to have in common. 1. They never show up alone. They always show up in 2s or 3s, but more often than not, it's a boy and a girl. There has never been an encounter with just one child. 2. Refusing their request makes them more insistent and often aggressive. It gets to the point where people have to slam the door closed or drive away at high speed. Then the kids just disappear. 3. They seem to know what you are thinking. They can manipulate you into feeling a sense of dread and fear. Of course, seeing black eyes can freak anyone out, but they always hide them at first. And this isn't because they don't want you to see them. They want to save them until the feeling of fear gets so intense it's horrifying. Then they will reveal their eyes to make you feel even worse. Sometimes the description of their eyes vary. Some say they are black eyes, while others say there are no eyes at all, just empty black sockets. Despite the fear they cause, they can be very convincing when asking to be let inside a home or car. 4. The way they talk. Their tone is flat and monotonous, almost robotic. It's like they're following a script. Their facial expressions are odd as well. Often a blank, emotionless look, which make it seem like they're not quite human. And this raises a question. If these children are not human, then what are they? It's been suggested that they could be vampires, demons or spirits. Some say vampires because of their pale skin, and they only show up at night. They need permission to come inside and are really insistent about it. Those who say they are demons or some kind of evil spirit say so because having completely black eyes are a sign of these kinds of beings. Some have said that after having an encounter with them, there is a strong smell of sulphur afterwards, which is linked to demons. They come and go as they please in a blink of an eye, which is a sign of spirits. There are also other ideas. They could be aliens. Grey aliens are often known to have huge black eyes, no pupils or whites, just how the black-eyed kids are described. They also have greyish skin, almost plastic looking. People think they look sick because they are so thin and pale or grey, again, just like grey aliens. Other more outlandish suggestions are they are a mix of aliens and humans, due to how they look human and have the characteristics of greys. Their eyes, thinness and skin colour are their alien side, while the rest of them are more human-like. Stepping away from the paranormal side of things and looking into more real-world possibilities, some skeptics say if it's true, then it could be some sort of cult, or even teenagers playing pranks. They could use makeup and black eye contact lenses to scare people. Those who don't believe this say it would be pretty hard for so many kids to pull off such a prank, which is not really the case. Once a prank is started, then it can be pulled off by kids all over the world. But in this case, the possibility of kids aged between 8 and 14 being in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night pulling off a prank like this is pretty unthinkable. The lack of information and physical evidence of these children limits us in determining what they really are, if they really exist, and what they really want. Whether they are demons, spirits, aliens, hybrids, or just another urban legend, it really is creepy hearing about them, especially as they don't fit into any single category. At least you know where you are with a spirit or demon. I'm sure stories of the black-eyed children will continue for a long time into the future, and as there has been sightings on Cannock Chase in Staffordshire, many people will carry on going up there with their cameras, hoping to get a glimpse of them. And although there are more who disbelieve in them than do, I'm guessing if there is a knock on the door late at night and you find a couple of children standing outside your door asking to come in, you will refuse them entry into your home. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.